did you come up with the idea of tackling the transgender issue?
I wanted to write a novel about sexual minorities. I wanted to write a novel about the intolerance for sexual differences. And I thought it would be a better story if my principal characters, my chief characters, were not only minorities, the way gays and lesbians are sexual minorities, but if my characters were minorities inside minorities, someone who is not trusted, not wholly believed, usually suspected by gays and straights alike, and similarly, the transgender man or the transgender woman is someone who is likewise suspicious in the gay community as well as the straight community, especially in the period of time I'm writing in the 50s and 60s.
How did the idea of the book grow in you?
Well, it always had the same architecture from the earliest time I thought of it. A bisexual boy falls in love with an older transgender woman, and waiting for him at the end of the novel and near the end of his life, when he's a much older guy, almost 70, he meets this young boy who wishes he'd been born a girl, a transgender in progress, he thinks of her. And all he realizes is, I can help her. I can be of assistance to this kid.
Can you tell us about the process of writing it? Where were you? Did you know the end before you started writing, for example?
Yeah. I begin with endings. The ending of a story is almost always the part that I see first. Before I'm even certain what a novel is, or what the story is, or what the story is about, before I am sure about who all the main characters or major minor characters are, I always know the ending. I begin with the ending. And I never feel that I have a novel that's even close to being ready to write unless I've written not just the last sentence, but well, many of the final sentences, 2-3 pages of an ending, and the sentences themselves, at least for 13 novels, the sentences themselves don't change. It's always a long process, but the process of actual writing isn't always that long. I suppose it's average for me that my novels wait to be written as long as 7 to 12 years. Somewhere in the 7 to 12 range is about average. That is, a novel exists, fully formed. I know almost everything about the story, certainly the ending, certainly the characters, certainly the title. It all exists for between 7 and 12 years before I begin to write it.
How much of yourself did you put in your main character, Billy?
No more, no less than I put in most of my main characters. My mother was also a prompter in a small-town theater, but my mother was the least homophobic person I ever knew. She was a political activist, an abortion rights activist before there were any abortion rights. She was very liberal and very involved politically, the opposite of Billy's mother. So I took some aspects of my life and members of my family and used small details, but very little of Billy or his experience is mine. I've never been bisexual or gay, but it's easy to imagine it. I have always believed that the transition from childhood or early adolescence to becoming an adult is a particularly difficult passage of time. And in most of my novels, something happens to a child or to an adolescent, to a teenager, that is formative in the sense that it makes him or her the adult they will become.